Anybody who's been watching this channel for a while now would know that Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach is my subjective choice for the worst game I've ever played. I hate almost everything about this game to the point where I almost made a 40-minute long video explaining why I hate it so much. The only reason why that video never happened is because the game is so insufferable to play I couldn't force myself to keep playing it in order to get footage for that video. And while many blame the game's poor performance at launch for its mixed reception, I believe that the game's performance only masqueraded the terrible game that laid underneath the surface. Sure, the game had detailed environments, but that doesn't mean much when you can't interact with them or when they are littered with f***ing security bots. Not to mention the endless backtracking in the game and the monotonous moment-to-moment gameplay. There exists no game on this earth that I despise more than this one, but there are some runner-ups. All this to say, you can imagine when the DLC titled Ruined was announced last year, my expectations were beneath the floor to say the least. I mean, the game was already ruined from its conception, so how they were going to take it the extra mile was beyond me. So imagine my shock when the DLC releases last week, and it's not bad at all. It's even pretty good, I'd say, and it fixes almost all the major problems I had with the base game. So for once, I've decided to stop being negative about everything and discuss why I believe Ruin redeems Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. Now keep in mind, this isn't really a review of Ruin, but more so my thoughts about how this DLC improves on the base game in various ways. Security Breach's biggest flaw, in my opinion, was how boring the game was. There are many reasons for this, but I do believe a major contributing factor was how big the game was. There is a lot of open space in the areas, but there's only 4 enemies that can kill you at any given moment, and typically there will only be one enemy hunting you down anyways. So a lot of the time, you can easily evade any threat due to the vastness of the areas you're exploring. In an attempt to combat this, however, the developers put a ton of security bots that will screen their head off if they see you. This then alerts an animatronic, which results in them teleporting behind you. Not only is this a cheap way to kill a player because the animatronic appears out of thin air, but it also makes traversing the map needlessly annoying. Security Breach created a problem for itself by having this massive map, then in an attempt to fix that problem, it created another problem instead. This is in stark contrast to Ruin, where the areas are a lot more claustrophobic and closed off, which removes the need for the annoying bots to be blocking your path. The game is a lot more linear and focused with what it wants you to do, and it makes for a more enjoyable and streamlined experience where you always know where to go and what to do. The DLC's short runtime also helps the game not feel as repetitive as the original, as although you are essentially completing the same task for 4 hours in different scenarios, because it's 4 hours instead of 15, it doesn't become nearly as annoying as the original game. But by far, my favorite addition was the Vanny system. The Vanny system is used by putting on Vanny's mask, which you get very early in the game that basically lets you see another layer hidden in the Pizzaplex. It also lets you teleport places. I don't know, it doesn't really make sense, don't question it. But my favorite addition regarding the Vanny system is the Entity. The Entity is an enemy that appears whenever you wear the mask for a prolonged period of time, and he can pretty much appear anywhere. If he touches you, he will then call an animatronic into the room to stalk you. I love his design. The creepy smile and posture as he slowly pursues you is nerve-wracking, and it just so happens that the Entity fills the exact role that I wanted Vanny to fill in the original game almost perfectly. A major thing that disappointed me in Security Breach was that Vanny was a scripted enemy that would only appear very briefly, rather than the cunning stalker enemy that would chase you around the Pizzaplex if you weren't careful. The lack of a unique threat in Security Breach only added to its monotony. So to see Steelbolt directly address this problem is great. Instead of having a million security bots and a teleporting chica, you have one enemy that can follow you anywhere if you aren't careful about what you're doing. This adds an extra layer of dread when playing the game because you very often have to use the mask to complete various puzzles, but there is always the risk of alerting the Entity when using the mask, so the game constantly keeps you on your toes while it's not being overly bearing or annoying. Another thing to note is the contrasting tone when it comes to this DLC and the original game. You might notice I've been referring to this DLC as its own game, but that's just because it really does feel like its own game. From the very beginning, you get the sense that the game is aiming to be a horror game in a horror series, unlike the base game, Coco Melon licking at game. The game is very dark, and seeing a formerly bright and colorful environment in complete disarray really elevates the level of unease as you go through the game. The graffiti on the walls, the torn environments, and the straight up giant holes in the ground really send the message that this is a completely different game trying to do a completely different thing, and I respect that. In spite of its shorter length, I also found the story to be more present and more sensical in this game than the original. The mystery was very intriguing, if not a bit obvious if you know any of the recent theories about FNAF. I thought the Mimic being confirmed and showing up was awesome, and there's a lot of things I saw in this DLC that I'm extremely curious about and excited to see what the implications will be in the lore. I don't want to go into too much detail out of fear of getting some minute detail wrong then getting roasted in the comments. That's Matt Pat's job, I ain't trying to do that. Although this is a shorter video, I figured after all the crap I've given this game, it wouldn't be fair if I stood idle by when they did something good. Don't get me wrong, this DLC isn't a masterpiece by any means, but I could always appreciate when developers hear feedback and aim to improve on it when they really didn't have to. It certainly beats pretending like criticism was unwarranted or being condescending with your audience's criticisms.
You can question the writing, but I would love to read your script.
What the hell is this?
Exactly. It is not the critic who counts, but the one who gets in the ring, whose face is marred with sweat and blood. So let me read your script.
Well, I'm not a chef, so I guess I can't complain about this food. There's some things wrong with this DLC, sure, but at this point, I really don't care. Like I said earlier, this isn't a review. This is just my video about me being happy about something to come out of this franchise, because God knows that has been a very, very long time since I got something I thoroughly enjoyed. So here's hoping that the next game that comes out of this series will be even better than this DLC, and with the quality and polish that I saw here, I have no doubt what follows will be excellent. After almost 2 years of relentlessly hating on this game, I could finally put my complaints to rest, as they were all addressed here. Great job, Steelwool. I just hope that the movie is as good. Oh, god damn it.